I don't attract gay men, and I'm not attracted to gay men. But no, but to be honest, it's like that's why I don't go to gay clubs. I don't go to gay things, because it's like the men that I attract are not there. I do that when I go to the straight rooms.
Straight rooms. That's what he said. The son of one of the most famous men on the planet, Magic Johnson, walking into straight spaces, chasing men who don't even claim to want him, and nobody said a word.
He's dead. And now there is Miss Thing. Like, we're not doing that either.
He killed the son, buried him, and stepped into something entirely new. But what nobody is asking, and what we are going to answer today, is who opened that door for EJ? Who handed this kid the keys to a world that would consume him? Magic Johnson's son, on Diddy's party list, at the after parties, in the inner circle, while Magic smiled for cameras and sold the world a redemption story. And now 50 Cent, a man who came from nothing, who has never sugarcoated a single thing in his entire career, is pointing the finger directly at Magic Johnson, not at EJ, not at Diddy, at the father. But here's what nobody is connecting. Magic Johnson didn't just raise EJ in Hollywood. He introduced him to it. He opened every door. He made every call. And some of those doors, once opened, you cannot close them. This is the story 50 Cent once told, and we're going to tell it. Let's start from the very beginning, because you cannot understand what 50 Cent is reacting to without understanding what EJ Johnson's life actually looked like from the inside. EJ Johnson grew up in one of the most watched households in all of Black America. His father, Irvin Magic Johnson, is not just a basketball legend, the man is a cultural icon. 12-time All-Star, 5 NBA championships, HIV survivor who turned his diagnosis into a decades-long advocacy mission, and a multi-billion-dollar business empire. Magic Johnson is, by every measure, one of the greatest success stories America has ever produced, and EJ was born into all of it. Now, here's where it gets complicated, and where the real story starts, because growing up as Magic Johnson's son came with expectations, not subtle ones, heavy, crushing, generational expectations. Magic's father worked sanitation in Michigan, picking up trash in 17-degree weather. That's the foundation Magic came from. Hard manual labor, dignity through suffering, nothing handed to you. Magic took every lesson from that freezing Michigan sidewalk and turned it into a billion-dollar portfolio. So what does that mean for EJ? It means EJ didn't just grow up rich. EJ grew up in the shadow of one of the most self-made men in American history. And EJ, by his own admission, didn't want any part of that path. He played sports in school. He hated it. He knew by the time he was a teenager that he was gay. And by 17 years old, EJ told his family. And according to reports from Advocate magazine, Magic Johnson was the last person EJ told, because EJ already knew his father would have the hardest time hearing it. And Magic did not handle it well, at least not at first. According to EJ, his father's initial reaction was not warm. Magic reportedly told EJ that he couldn't wear feminine clothing. He didn't want EJ to act gay in public. There are accounts that suggest Magic tried, at least for a period, to suppress who his son was becoming. Not out of malice necessarily, but out of fear. The fear of a man who built his legacy on a very specific image of Black masculine excellence, and didn't know how to reconcile that with who his child actually was. Now, Magic eventually came around. That part is true. These days, Magic and Cookie Johnson are outspoken advocates for LGBTQ rights, and a big part of that shift was watching their son live openly and thrive publicly. That's the version of the story you see on red carpets and in magazine profiles. But here's what that redemption narrative glosses over. There was a window, a critical, formative window, during which EJ Johnson was figuring out who he was, navigating his identity, coming to terms with his sexuality, and processing rejection from the most important man in his life. And during that window, EJ was also being introduced slowly and systematically into Hollywood's elite social ecosystem. And the question 50 Cent is essentially raising is this: who was watching EJ during that window? And who was he meeting? Let's talk about who EJ became publicly, because there's a version of this story that gets sold as pure liberation, and then there's the version with more complicated layers underneath it. EJ Johnson, in his own words, no longer goes by He-Man or even Son. In a candid interview with Carlos King, EJ told a story about his own birthday June and a declaration he made to his parents.
But even I told them on my birthday in June that I was like, we're not doing he, we're not doing man, we're not doing gay. And it was very freeing. Even like son, I was like, the world tried to give me that label, like Magic Johnson's son. And I was like, well, he's dead. And now there is Miss Thing. we're not doing that either.
Now look, this is the version of EJ that gets celebrated on social media. The confident, free-spirited, gender, non-conforming son of Magic Johnson, unbothered and unbossed. And there is something genuinely brave about a person publicly owning who they are in the face of an impossibly high-pressure environment. But here's where the narrative starts to crack, because in that same interview, EJ made a series of statements that stopped people cold. First, EJ said he doesn't date gay men. Not just that he's not attracted to gay men, EJ went further and said he doesn't even go to gay clubs, doesn't go to gay events. Instead, and this is the part that lit the internet on fire.
I don't attract gay men, and I'm not attracted to gay men. But no, but to be honest, it's like, that's why I don't go to gay clubs. I don't go to, gay things, because it's like the men that I attract are not there. I do that when I go to the straight rooms.
Straight rooms. EJ Johnson, a person who presents in full feminine regalia, who uses she, they pronouns, who has publicly rejected every male label, is going into straight spaces to pursue men who identify as heterosexual. Men who have been with women for most of their lives. Now, before we get to 50 Cent's response to all of this, let's be honest about something. The internet had already started doing the math before 50 even opened his mouth. People on social media pointed out an uncomfortable truth. The men EJ claims to attract aren't straight. They might identify as straight. They might present as straight. But biologically, they are men pursuing someone who was born male. And that, by definition, is not heterosexuality. One person online wrote it plainly: those men aren't straight. They're closeted, or bisexual, or questioning. They just haven't said so publicly. And then there was the second statement from EJ, the one that really truly enraged people, especially women.
It's especially if I look cuter than any girl does. Like, what's the problem? Like, what's the issue? And that's exactly how I apply it to myself to these days, in the way that I present, like in my feminine regalia. I've always been a feminine being, and like that's just like how I best express myself. But I'm like, listen, I'm out all the time, and like I'm killing a dress and no one else is. Like, the girls in the room are not doing it. Like, they don't look cute. They're not dressed to any nines.
So let's process this. EJ does not identify as a woman, explicitly rejects the label, told Magic and Cookie not to call him their son, but also does not claim womanhood. And yet, in the same breath, EJ declares that he looks better than every woman in every room he walks into. You want the crown without earning it. You want to borrow the aesthetic, the dresses, the wigs, the Birkin bags, the makeup, the entire visual language of femininity, and then turn around and use it as a weapon to declare superiority over the very women whose culture you're adopting. That is not liberation. That is entitlement. And it looks a lot different when you understand who EJ's father is and what kind of life EJ has had access to. Now here is where the story changes energy entirely. 50 Cent saw everything. He watched the Carlos King interview. He watched EJ's comments go viral. He watched the internet debate whether EJ's logic made sense. And 50 did what 50 always does. He spoke. 50 Cent went to social media and posted something that was short, direct, and absolutely savage in its simplicity. He wrote, and I'm quoting directly, "Wait, if you're in a relationship with a," referring to EJ, "you're gay. Period. Full stop." And when people pushed back on that, when people accused 50 of being homophobic, of being insensitive, of punching down, 50 doubled down without blinking. He said, if you are a man and you sleep with a person who was born male, you are gay. That's it. Now, some people want to frame this as 50 being hateful, but here's the context they leave out. 50 Cent's own mother, who died when he was 8 years old, identified as queer. 50 has spoken about this. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, that she was like that she had a girlfriend. This is not a man who grew up sheltered from LGBTQ identity. This is a man who grew up in it. 50's issue is not with gay people. 50's issue is with the pretense, with the performance of something that doesn't match the reality, with a person saying the men they sleep with are straight when, by 50's definition, that is simply not possible. But here's the layer that the blogs didn't pick up. Here's where 50's commentary stopped being about pronouns and started being about something much, much darker. Because 50 Cent knows the industry. 50 Cent has been inside those rooms. And when 50 sees EJ Johnson talking about going to straight rooms and attracting straight men, 50 isn't just critiquing EJ's logic. 50 is seeing something that EJ may not even fully see in himself. 50 is seeing a young person who was shaped by an environment, molded by access, introduced to spaces and people and parties at a formative age. And the question 50 seems to be asking not out loud, but between every line is, what happened to EJ in those rooms? And who put him there? Now we get to the part of this story that changes everything. After the federal raids on Diddy's mansions, both in Los Angeles and Miami, a lot of things started surfacing. Documents, names, party lists, witness accounts, and buried inside all of that chaos was something that quietly set the internet on fire. E.J. Johnson's name appeared on one of Diddy's party lists. Not just the main party list, the after party list. Now, for anyone who has followed the Diddy story closely, you know that the distinction between Diddy's parties and Diddy's after parties is everything. The main parties were industry events, red carpet, photography, celebrity appearances, business networking wrapped in expensive champagne and designer outfits. The after parties were something else entirely. The after parties were where Diddy's real inner circle gathered, where the cameras went away, where, according to multiple accounts from people who were there or who worked for Diddy, things happened that nobody was supposed to talk about. These were not public events. You did not get into Diddy's after parties based on who you were. You got in based on how close you were to Diddy personally. And E.J. Johnson was reportedly there, regularly. Now, there was also a blind item circulating around the time that the Diddy story first started breaking. The item claimed that a major NBA star was going to get pulled into Diddy's legal mess because his son loved Diddy's parties. The son, the item said, had been a frequent guest, a consistent presence, not just at one event, but over a period of years. Everyone reading that blind item had the same thought. Magic Johnson, E.J. Johnson. Now, blind items are blind items. They're speculation. They're unverified. We are not presenting this as fact. But here's what makes this particular blind item impossible to dismiss. It fits. It fits the public record of E.J.'s social circle. It fits the timeline of when E.J. was building his public persona. It fits the world that E.J. describes inhabiting the parties, the straight men, the rooms where nobody is who they say they are. And then there are the rumors, the direct rumors, not the blind items. Multiple sources have floated the claim, and again, this is rumor, not confirmed fact, that EJ and Diddy had a relationship. Not a friendship, not a networking connection, a romantic relationship, one that allegedly lasted for years. If you believe that claim, then several things about EJ's current public statements start to look very different. The talk about straight men, the talk about going to straight rooms, the declaration that he's not attracted to gay men. All of it starts to read like a person who learned, in a very specific environment, to never name what was actually happening around him. Because in Diddy's world, nothing was ever named. Everything was performance. Everything was deniability. The parties had a cover. The relationships had a cover. The whole ecosystem was built on the foundation of public identity being completely disconnected from private behavior. And if EJ was inside that ecosystem, really inside it, after party inside it then, EJ didn't just attend those events. EJ was taught how that world works, what gets said, what never gets said, and how to move through straight rooms while carrying secret. Now, to understand the gravity of what it meant to be in Diddy's inner circle, you have to understand what that inner circle actually looked like, because EJ Johnson was not the only person being discussed in the context of Diddy's alleged hidden relationships. There was Stevie J, a music industry veteran, a man who had been in Diddy's orbit for years. According to Lil Rod, a man who worked directly for Diddy and was tasked with recording and documenting Diddy's activities, Stevie J was more than just a friend. Lil Rod claimed that Stevie J used to carry weapons for Diddy, that Stevie helped run the infamous parties, that Stevie engaged in behavior at those parties that Lil Rod said he had video evidence of. And then there was the moment that Lil Rod described where Diddy allegedly showed him a video of Stevie J engaging intimately with another man. And when he showed it to Lil Rod, Diddy's message was reportedly clear. This is normal. This is how men in the music industry move. Don't be surprised. Don't be shocked. Get comfortable. That is not a friendship dynamic. That is an indoctrination script. That is a man showing you the evidence that even the people you look up to are doing this so that you feel less alone, or more trapped, or both. Now add Cuba Gooding Jr. to this picture. According to Lil Rod's lawsuit allegations, and these are allegations, this is not confirmed, Cuba Gooding Jr. was also part of Diddy's circle. Lil Rod claimed that Diddy had essentially mentored Cuba, brought him in, shaped him. And some people believe that mentorship went beyond professional guidance. Now think about what this network looks like when you map it out. Diddy at the center, Stevie J close to him for years, Cuba Gooding Jr. in the orbit. Industry parties were the official version of what happened, and the real version were two completely different stories. And somewhere on that guest list, the after-party list, not just the public list, E.J. Johnson, Magic Johnson's son. Now here is where 50 Cent's position becomes about something much bigger than pronouns and identity politics. Because what 50 seems to understand, what men who grew up in the industry understand at a gut level, is that Diddy's world wasn't random. You didn't stumble into Diddy's after parties by accident. You were brought in. You were introduced. Someone vouched for you. And for E.J. Johnson, who was that someone? Who made the introduction? This is the part of the story that nobody wants to say directly. This is the part that makes people uncomfortable. But 50 Cent is not a man who tiptoes around uncomfortable truths. And so neither are we. Magic Johnson is one of the most well-connected men in America, not just in basketball, not just in entertainment, in business, in politics, in every elite social circle this country has. Magic Johnson has access to rooms that most people will never even know exist. And Magic Johnson used that access to build not just a personal brand, but an entire empire. Now, when EJ was coming into his own, when EJ was stepping out publicly as a gender, non-conforming, queer, fashionable presence in Hollywood, Magic was already deeply embedded in the entertainment industry. Magic was doing business with people across every sector of Hollywood and beyond. Diddy Combs was a part of that world. Bad Boy Records, Revolt TV, the Sean John brand, the philanthropic work, Diddy moved in the same elite circles that Magic moved in. Is it outrageous to ask whether Magic Johnson introduced his son to Diddy Combs? Not at all. It would almost be more surprising if they'd never crossed paths. These are two of the most socially connected black men in American entertainment history. Their worlds overlapped completely. But here's the question that 50 Cent seems to be sitting with, and it's a devastating question when you really let it land. Did Magic Johnson know what Diddy's world really was? And did he let his son walk into it anyway? Now there are two possible answers to that question, and neither one is clean. Option 1, Magic had no idea what was happening behind the scenes at Diddy's parties. He knew Diddy as an industry peer. He knew the public version, the philanthropist, the mogul, the culture icon. He allowed EJ to socialize in those circles because they appeared safe. He was wrong. He was a father who didn't ask the right questions, and the cost of that was his son being absorbed into an environment that, by every emerging account, was predatory toward the vulnerable and the young. Option 2, and this is the option that makes 50 Cent's rage make more sense. Magic Johnson knew more than he's saying. Maybe not everything, maybe not the worst of it, but enough. Enough that a man with his level of access and intelligence and street wisdom should have looked at what his son was walking into and said no, should have blocked that door, should have used the same protective instinct that he used to build a billion-dollar empire to protect his own child. And he didn't. Now, 50 Cent has not spelled all of this out in a press conference. He hasn't written an essay, but 50's commentary, his pattern of statements, his willingness to name EJ specifically, his doubling down when people pushed back all of it, points to someone who is not just amused by a viral moment. 50 is angry, genuinely, specifically angry. And when 50 Cent gets that kind of targeted about something, there is usually a reason. The reason, it seems, is that 50 sees something in EJ's story that doesn't add up. A young man who grew up with every resource in the world. A father with every connection in the world. And somehow, EJ ended up in after parties thrown by a man who is now facing federal sex trafficking charges. Somehow, EJ ended up in a social world where, as EJ himself describes it, the men he's intimate with won't claim it publicly. Somehow, EJ ended up shaped by an ecosystem where the private version of your life and the public version never match. That's not a coincidence. That's not bad luck. That is the result of a door being opened. And when 50 Cent looks at the person holding that door, he sees Magic Johnson. Here's where we need to slow down and look at EJ Johnson not as a target, but as a product. Because the most disturbing thing about this entire story is not that EJ is controversial. It's that EJ, in many ways, looks exactly like someone who was shaped by environments they didn't fully choose. Think about the statements EJ made in that Carlos King interview. The insistence that the men he dates are straight. The declaration that he doesn't go to gay spaces. The need to locate himself in the company of men who are outwardly, publicly outwardly men who won't acknowledge their relationship with EJ in mainstream social settings. That is not the behavior of someone who is free. That is the behavior of someone who is taught very specifically, very deliberately, that hidden is normal. That what happens privately doesn't affect what you call yourself publicly. That you can exist in rooms where nothing is what it appears to be. And that's just how the world works.
Has it always been that way for you in terms of when it comes to men? Has it always been what some people consider the straight guy always being the one that would approach you?
Or somebody who, has been intimate and dating, women for most of their life, or like up until then. For sure. Absolutely. It has always been that way?
Always. It has always been that way. EJ has always been drawn to men who publicly live as straight, even before the public persona, even before the fashion and the Birkins and the reality TV. The pattern was already there, which means the pattern predates EJ's public life, which means the pattern was established in private, in rooms, in relationships that the public never saw. Now layer in the Diddy connection. Layer in the rumors about a years-long relationship conducted entirely out of public view. Layer in what we now know about the kind of behavioral norms that were cultivated inside Diddy's social circle. The idea, as Lil Rod described Diddy saying, that it's common for men in the music industry to be intimate together, that it's normal, that even the people you look up to are doing it. If EJ was immersed in that world during formative years, and all available evidence suggests he was then EJ was being told, repeatedly and by influential people, that secret is the standard. That hidden is how this works. That the men you love will never call it love. That the world you actually live in has nothing to do with the world you describe publicly. And who introduced EJ to that world? Who gave EJ the access? Who was too busy building an empire to notice what his son was being built into? 50 Cent's anger is not really about pronouns. It was never really about pronouns. The pronoun debate was the spark, but the fire underneath it is about a father who had every tool in the world to protect his child, and may have, whether through negligence or complicity, or a complicated combination of both, handed that child to wolves wearing industry credentials. Now let's talk about Magic Johnson's role in the entertainment industry specifically, because this context is critical. Magic Johnson has been doing business in Hollywood and in the entertainment world for decades. He owned movie theaters. He had partnerships across the entertainment sector. He built relationships with people at every level of the industry, including people who we now know were operating with a very different set of ethics than their public image suggested. Magic has also spoken publicly about how he approaches business. He is methodical. He is thorough. He famously required his daughter Elisa to write a complete business plan before he would support her eyewear line. He said no the first time because the plan wasn't good enough. He made her come back and prove it. That is a man who does not let things slide. That is a man who pays attention to details. So here is the question that 50 Cent implicitly raises, and it is devastating. If Magic Johnson is thorough enough to require a full business plan from his daughter before lending his name to her project, how did he not apply that same level of scrutiny to the world his son was inhabiting? How does a man who scrutinizes spreadsheets and business models and financial projections not scrutinize the guest lists his son was on? Not scrutinize the after parties his son was attending? Not scrutinize the relationship his son allegedly had with a man who is now sitting in federal custody on charges that include The answer that 50 Cent seems to believe is not flattering to Magic. Because in 50's world, in the world 50 grew up in, the streets of Southside Jamaica, Queens, where there were no golden tickets and no industry fathers to open doors, when something happens to someone you're responsible for, you either didn't know, and you should have, or you knew, and you look away. Neither one is acceptable when you're talking about your child. When 50's comments first went viral, the initial wave of response was predictable. The LGBTQ advocacy community pushed back hard. Celebrities made vague statements about love and acceptance. Social media was filled with people calling 50 homophobic, transphobic, out of touch. 50 did not move. And here's what's important about that. Because 50 Cent has been in this industry long enough to know that silence can be interpreted as agreement, and that doubling down invites more heat. 50 knows this. He has been in feuds that lasted years. He has been sued. He has been criticized on every platform imaginable. And when 50 believes he is right, he does not walk it back. Not for public pressure, not for criticism, not for anything. The fact that 50 doubled down specifically on the EJ Magic Diddy axis tells you that 50 is not operating from emotion. He is operating from information, from the kind of pattern recognition that comes from spending decades in an industry where what you see in public and what's actually happening are almost never the same thing. 50 Cent called EJ gay. That was the headline. But the subtext, the thing 50 was actually saying was this: the world EJ describes inhabiting, the straight rooms, the straight men, the hidden relationships that is not EJ's fault. That is what EJ was taught. That is the ecosystem EJ was placed in. And the person who placed EJ there, whether intentionally or through catastrophic negligence, was his father. And Magic Johnson, who has spent 30 years crafting an image of community, advocacy, support, and redemption, has not said a single word in response. Not to 50's comments, not to the Diddy rumors, not to the blind items, not to any of it. The man who required a written business plan from his daughter to protect a brand has made no public statement to protect his son's reputation in one of the most damaging rumor cycles of the decade. And 50 Cent noticed. Here's something that almost everyone covering this story has missed. E.J. Johnson, since Diddy's arrest, has not made a single public comment on the situation. Not on the rumors, not on the party list, not on the blind items, nothing. Complete silence. Now you can read that silence two ways. The first way is that EJ simply has no connection to Diddy beyond the occasional industry event, and the rumors are exaggerated or entirely fabricated, and commenting would only amplify a false narrative. That's the charitable read. The second way, and this is the read that 50 Cent appears to be operating from, is that EJ's silence is exactly what you'd expect from someone who was inside a world where silence was the rule, where you don't comment, where you don't confirm, where you don't create a trail, because that's what was modeled for him. That's what was normalized. You move through those spaces and you never ever put anything on the record. Or, and this is option 3, the one nobody wants to say, EJ knows exactly how close he was to something catastrophic. And the silence isn't strategic, the silence is survival. That is what 50 Cent is reacting to. Not the pronouns, not the identity, not the fashion choices. 50 is reacting to a young person who, by every observable indicator, was placed inside an ecosystem of secrecy and exploitation during formative years, and who now describes the world using the exact language and logic that ecosystem produced. Straight rooms, hidden men, relationships that never get named publicly. That's not liberation, that's a blueprint. And someone wrote it for EJ a long time ago. Now let's zoom out, because this story, as specific as it is to EJ and Magic and Diddy and 50, is also part of a pattern that runs through the entire entertainment industry. Time and again, we have watched the children of industry power players be absorbed into elite social circles that, from the outside, look like opportunity and access. Red carpets, exclusive parties, the right names and the right contact lists. And from the inside, from what survivors and witnesses are now beginning to describe, those same circles were ecosystems of exploitation, of grooming, of access being weaponized against the vulnerable. Diddy did not build his network overnight. He built it over decades, through precisely the kind of social architecture that is very hard to distinguish from legitimate industry networking until you're already inside it. And once you're inside it, once your name is on those lists, once you're at those after parties, once you've been shown what Lil Rod described being shown, the door behind you closes very quietly. E.J. Johnson did not walk into that world because he was reckless or naive or self-destructive. E.J. walked into that world because the people who were supposed to protect him opened the door. And 50 Cent, who has said repeatedly, in different contexts, over many years that the music industry is darker than anyone wants to admit, cannot look at E.J. Johnson's public statements, the ones about straight rooms and hidden relationships and identity that never quite resolves, and not see what he sees. A person who was shaped by that darkness, and a father who, for whatever reason, did not shield his child from it. Let's be clear about one thing. 50 Cent has not, to date, made a single statement that directly says Magic Johnson handed EJ to Diddy. He has not gone that specific. He has not gone that direct. But 50 Cent has been in the entertainment industry for more than 20 years. He understands exactly how much weight a well-placed comment carries. He understands that when you call someone out by name and then go silent, the silence does more damage than the words did, because the silence leaves the question hanging, and the question, once it's in the air, doesn't go away. The question is, Magic, what do you know? What do you know about the environments your son was navigating? What do you know about the relationships EJ had with people who are now at the center of federal investigations? What do you know about what was happening at those after parties? And what did you know when it was happening? Magic Johnson has spent 30 years as one of the most visible, vocal, and respected figures in American culture. He has spoken about HIV, he has spoken about race in America, he has spoken about his marriage, his family, his faith, his business philosophy. He has never had a problem finding a microphone. But when it comes to Diddy and EJ and the rumors about what his son was doing and who his son was with, Magic Johnson has been completely, entirely, unmistakably silent. And 50 Cent, who was raised in the kind of environment where silence is never accidental, is watching that silence very closely. So here's where we land. E.J. Johnson is not the villain of this story. Whatever you think about E.J.'s statements, whatever you think about the pronoun debate, whatever you think about the comments about looking better than women, E.J. is someone who was born into extraordinary privilege and extraordinary pressure simultaneously. Someone who was rejected, at least initially, by the most most important man in his life. Someone who found identity and community in spaces that we are now learning were not as safe as they appeared. 50 Cent is not just poking fun at a viral moment. 50 is a man who grew up with nothing, who learned to read rooms and people and patterns at a survival level, who has been inside enough industry darkness to recognize it in someone else's story. When 50 speaks about this, he is speaking with the specific urgency of someone who sees the full picture and doesn't understand why more people aren't talking about it. And Magic Johnson built one of the greatest comeback stories in the history of American sports and American business. He overcame a diagnosis that was supposed to end him. He built an empire from almost nothing. He is, in almost every measurable sense, an extraordinary man. But extraordinary men are still capable of failing their children, and the failure doesn't have to be dramatic or intentional to be devastating. Sometimes the most damaging thing a powerful father can do is open the wrong door and trust that his name will protect what walks through it.
You know, I've always been a feminine being, and like that's just like how I best express myself. But I'm like, listen, I'm out all the time, and like I'm killing a dress and no one else is.
EJ is out all the time, killing a dress in rooms that EJ didn't build and didn't choose, in a world that was handed to him along with everything else. And 50 Cent wants to know, Magic, was it worth it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Magic Johnson bears responsibility for the world EJ was placed in? Do you think 50 Cent's instincts are right? And do you think EJ's silence about Diddy tells us more than any statement ever could? Stay locked in, because this story is far from over.